Welcome back. I'm delighted that Charlie Mayfield, who is advising the government on how to help businesses and employers, including the public sector, actually, keep disabled people on their books. Now, I know you've made it clear that the advice is not about the other pathway from out of work into work, but you'll have heard Anushka talk about the scoop that she had today, which is that the Work and Pension Select Committee has asked the government to pause the cuts until we have a better risk analysis of how many jobs are actually going to be created and what the impact on people are going to be. Do you have any sympathy with the Work and Pensions Committee? Because I have to say, I was slightly amazed that when Ms Kendall announced these cuts, they weren't able to give us any hard data on who would be affected, how many, and all the rest of that vital stuff.
Well, I'm not reviewing or involved with anything to do with the benefit reforms.
Yeah.
What I think is clear is that any cuts to benefits are always difficult politically, and I think we're seeing some of that playing out. But I also think, given the situation the government is dealing with, both the increases that have happened in the number of claimants and the projected increases, I think it's probably fair to say that any government, any responsible government, needs to be looking at this and needs to be taking action on it. So I don't think it's surprising that the government is taking action on that issue.
But if we look at the international comparisons, and you've been touring the world looking at how other countries do this, I think I'm right in saying in a country like Denmark, what is it, the participation rate from disabled people in work is 80%?
Yeah, it's about 77%.
77%.
So it's much higher, and in this country, depending on how it's measured, it's down at about 44, 45%. So there's
is there any chance that we can narrow that gap, significantly?
I think there is, and again, my review is looking at people who are disabled, but also just generally ill, ill health in the workplace. So it's both sides. I do. I mean, an example is actually we also went to the Netherlands, and in the Netherlands, what they had in the late 90s, they were talking about a crisis of participation or crisis of people going on benefits. And over a period of about 5 years, they more than halved the number of people who were flowing out of the workplace and onto benefits. And they've actually sustained that level ever since then, since about 2005. It's only blipped up very slightly towards the end, but they're still about 40% below the level that they were at in 2000. So, and that happened through a coordinated series of action around labour market policy to achieve change. And I think it's
and what sort of things did they do that we could replicate?
Well, I think this is where you have to be very careful in making simplistic comparisons between countries, because they're so different in so many ways. And we saw some very useful things that in Denmark and in the Netherlands. But I think if I was going to give you a simple answer to it,
please.
I would simply say that if you think about this whole territory, you can invest time and money in keeping people in work and preventing them from getting ill. You can invest time and money in rehabilitating and getting them back to work when they're ill, and you can spend money on people who are then out of the labour market and receiving benefits. Both Denmark and the Netherlands actually spend more in total GDP in terms of this whole territory. But the difference is that they spend more.
Where do they spend it?
They spend more in the first two and relatively less in the third. We are in a situation where we're spending a lot in the third. And the problem with that is it's sort of everybody loses. The people who are not in work and not getting the benefits of progression and fulfillment that come from good work are not getting that. Employers are losing out on key people in the workplace, which we need. And of course, the government and society as a whole is then actually having
just broadly, reallocate more money to support companies to keep people in work and reallocate much more, essentially, to the health service to help people get through this. Is that what you're saying?
It's not so much, I wouldn't put it necessarily about reallocating money towards companies. I think it's more about recognising that this problem has to be solved by employers working with government. Many of the most difficult issues we face cannot be solved just by the government alone. I think we often talk about the government should do this, the government should do that. But actually the reality is a lot of the health issues that occur in workplaces are far better solved by employers. And so what we have to do is make sure that we're creating the mechanisms and the support systems that enable and encourage them, and sometimes require them to do that better. And then I think we can achieve some much better results.
Well, some of that would be state support for employers, I assume.
Some of that, they have a role to play for sure.
And so, Stephen, I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, but we had a conversation not that long ago about your disability. But you now have a hugely active working life. Some would say you're hyperactive. What do you think helped you most, as it were, to, keep yourself, not just keep yourself in work, but, actually thrive.
Yes, so many of your viewers won't know, but I was physically disabled for 18 years, from my teens until just a few years ago when I was given a hip replacement by the NHS, which transformed my life. A lot of my decision-making when I was younger was shaped by the fact that I walked on crutches. I should have had two, but I walked with one. And the people who I worked with were very accommodating, whether that was in Tesco, whether that was in offices. I worked thereafter, but I always made a significant effort to try and keep myself as fit as possible, which is really hard when you're disabled. And it's why I get very frustrated at the narrative in Westminster around disabled people and this suggestion that they're workshy. Being physically impacted in your ability to do something has a huge impact, not just on your physical health, but your mental health, your ability to work. And we should be supporting these people, not pushing them down.
And Gillian, you were mentioning that you were mental health minister for a period. What more do you think both government and employers can do together to help people who, Charlie, eloquently described, start to suffer from whether it might be anxiety or stress, and unfortunately their condition doesn't get picked up until they feel unable to work?
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of work done on disability, so disability confidence schemes that have been going on for years and have had really good impacts. There has not been the same focus on mental health. So when I was mental health minister, we had a joint group that was set up with the DWP looking at all of the right interventions. For example, NHS talking therapies. Most people don't know that you can self-refer. They're free. You can self-refer to those. A lot of people don't even know about them. So making sure that there was awareness, but also specific support. As a business person, obviously employing thousands of people over the years in many different countries, the key thing is to make sure that when people get up in the morning, it's your job as a leader that they jump out of bed excited about going into work and feel supported in work. And you have to have that at the front of your mind because it is very competitive to get people, to train people, to keep people. So businesses are hugely vested in this, and I think businesses would look to support this. But we're all learning a lot more about mental health, and post the pandemic, it's obviously had a huge rise.
So thanks to all of you. You've all been absolutely amazing. Now that's it. While the rest of us were working, Nigel Farage has been sunning himself. We're not bitter. We're just taking our own 1 week break next week. See you in a fortnight. Goodbye.